And welcome to another 2-minute teaching tip from BYU Hawaii's Center for Learning and Teaching. Today's tip is to create explicit learning goals to explain to students the purpose that underlies the learning. In a face-to-face class, it's easier for students to understand why they're doing certain tasks, and it's easier for us to communicate it to them. But in a remote learning situation, that can be much more difficult, and if students don't understand why they're doing something and the learning goal for it, the task can seem like busy work to them. So explicitly explaining the learning purpose behind a task can actually increase the student's likelihood of success and learning with the task. So let's take a look at some ideas about how to do this. Here's the first example I want to show you right here. This is in a quiz that I have in one of my classes here, and it just explicitly states right at the beginning, learning goals. Apply thieves. This is a reading strategy to a new reading to get an overview, to understand the big picture. Use review questions in a chapter segment as a focus to help focus your reading. Okay, so there's these 3 learning goals. I want to show you an example of an assignment. This is from my class where this is a face-to-face class, and we talked about the purpose behind this assignment in class, but this is what's on Canvas, and this is pretty vague for students if I were just to transfer this to a remote learning situation. So you can see here, right? It just says, do the exercise on page 215 of the textbook. If that's the only explanation, and then write your answers on a document, just write your answers, submit the document when you're finished, and that's it. If that's the only explanation that students see, they're going to feel like this is busy work to them, and it'll be hard for them to be motivated to try. And they might not know what to learn from it. Here's another example. This one's a little bit better, but still quite not explicit enough, I don't think. Right, so this was a class where we tutored some Japanese students in my TESOL class, tutored them in English. And it says right here, I've got it highlighted, the purpose of this assignment is to think about how we applied our TESOL knowledge while tutoring. Okay, so that's kind of the learning goal, but it's buried in there and it's a little bit hard to see. So even this kind of description here might be a little bit difficult for students in a remote learning situation. Here's one more example. This is a little bit more explicit. It says learning goal right at the front. But then there's this paragraph, and the paragraph sort of explains what it is that we're supposed to learn through doing these observations. This is a little bit better. I particularly like it because it says learning goal at the beginning, but it doesn't have verbs at the beginning. So back to this kind of example here. Learning goals. I love this. It's in red. It's in a big heading font right at the top of the assignment. And there are 3 clear things that students are going to learn from doing this assignment. And the other thing I like about this is that each one begins with a very clear action verb, right? Explain, analyze, evaluate. So as students work on this assignment, they're going to do those 3 things. That's what they're going to do, and they'll learn by doing it. Explain, analyze, evaluate. And one more example here, another learning goal, different way to look at it. Use the ORE strategy to express clear opinions in writing. So when you're writing these goals, you have to think about the verb. The verb is the most important part. And where do you get the verb? Well, you can get it by going on Google, Bloom's taxonomy. If you Google Bloom's taxonomy, you can come up with all these lists on images. But for more information on this, I'm going to invite you to look at another video that we have on our site here, Maintaining Rigor in Remote Learning. This video goes into more detail about how to use these verbs as you create learning goals. So the main tip for today is to be explicit about the learning that you want students to do. In order for them to really engage well with your material and learn from it, we have to tell them what they're supposed to learn and make that very explicit. Happy teaching and aloha.